Welcome back. This is Sheila Hall, and you're listening to a space where we talk about menopause, grief, hormones, and nervous system healing with honesty, compassion, and truth. Let's begin. So, I want to take my very first podcast to tell you a little bit about my story and why this whole podcast that I'm doing makes sense to me. And I'm hoping it'll make sense to you if you understand where I'm coming from and how I got involved in menopause and grief and hormones. Because from the time I was young, I imagined myself as a mother. Not in a vague way, in a deeply rooted way. I carried that dream into adulthood with excitement, with expectancy, with faith. And when my body began to struggle, I didn't interpret it as an ending. I interpreted it as a delay. Every surgery felt like, okay, this is the step before the step. Every diagnosis felt like, now we know what to fix. And every round of IVF felt like, this might be the one. And even when it didn't work, I still believed hope became my survival language. And I know some of you listening understand that kind of hope, the kind that keeps showing up even when your body is exhausted, even when your heart is tired, even when your soul feels stretched thin. I had so many surgeries, I honestly stopped counting. From endometriosis, fibroids, fallopian tube surgeries, tumors, procedure after procedure, scar after scar. And at the time, I thought that meant I was being handled, that I was being treated, that I was being helped. But what I didn't yet know was this. No one was asking my body what was wrong. Why do you keep needing surgery? No one was asking about the hormonal imbalances underneath it, the inflammation underneath it, the systemic stress underneath it, the nervous system underneath it. We were managing parts, but not listening to the whole. And I didn't yet have the knowledge to ask better questions. So I trusted the system, I trusted the process, I trusted the next intervention. And I kept believing in the possibility of motherhood. When menopause showed up in my life, it didn't come in loudly at first. It was subtle. Some changes in my cycle, it wasn't really too much. I felt a little off. And I even remember going to my doctors and saying, do you think I'm getting ready to go into menopause? And she asked me, were my periods changing? I was like, no. She's like, well, no, you're not going to menopause. 3 months later, it was like somebody turned off a light. Just click. Everything stopped. Everything crashed. Everything put me in the depression, the thoughts, the wonderment of it all really, really put me in a dark, dark place. And it was like a whisper, like truth usually does, And what that whisper said was, the door has closed. Not just the physical door of fertility, but the emotional door of possibility. The miracle I had held space for all those years was no longer possible in the way I had imagined it. And the grief that came with that realization, I didn't even have the language for it first. I just felt it in my chest, in my breath, in my sleep, in my digestion, in my energy. It wasn't just sadness. It was identity grief, timeline grief, expectation grief, soul grief. And no one had warned me that menopause could carry that kind of loss. We talk about menopause as a biological change, as, hot flashes, sleep disruption, mood shifts. But we rarely talk about it as grief. When this happened to me, I had severe suicidal tendencies. I shut everyone out of my life. I didn't talk about it. I didn't know who to talk. I didn't know what was going on with me. And yet for so many women, this happens to. Your body, you have grief for your body that you used to have, the energy you used to feel, the version of yourself that existed before symptoms, the seasons you thought you were still ahead, that were still ahead of you, the children you longed for, the life you imagined. Some women grieve losing fertility, some grieve losing youth, some grieve losing vitality, some grieve losing identity. I lost all of those things all at once. But yet, many don't even realize that grief is what they're feeling. They think they're broken, or they think they're falling. They think they're too emotional. But often, they're mourning, And mourning deserves tenderness. What I learned later through functional medicine, through holistic training, through studying the nervous system and hormones changed everything. I learned that hormones influence inflammation. Inflammation influences endometriosis. Estrogen dominance influences fibroids. Chronic stress influences reproductive collapse. Nervous system dysregulation influences the entire system. I learned that the body does not malfunction randomly. The body communicates. And when we suppress symptoms without understanding signals, the body often escalates. What showed up in my reproductive system was not isolated. It was systemic. And if someone had paused long enough to ask why, my path might have looked very different. That knowledge no longer brings me bitterness. It brings me mission. This is why I teach women now to listen to what their bodies are asking for. Not just what hurts, but what it means. To learn how to ask better questions, to demand root cause answers, to become active participants in their wellness, to trust their intuition, to learn the language of hormones, to regulate the nervous system, to prevent silent damage before it explodes into crisis. Because I don't want women to meet their truth only after it has already taken so much. We deserve informed hope, not delayed understanding. Yeah, I still grieve sometimes. I still feel that tenderness. Some days the reality feels heavier than others. But now that grief sits beside purpose, beside knowledge, beside advocacy, beside a calling that was born from loss. I didn't lose my womb and gain nothing. I lost a dream, but I gained a voice. And that voice now speaks for women who haven't yet found theirs. So if this story touched something in you, if you recognize your own grief in mine, if menopause has felt confusing, heavy, emotional, or even lonely, I just want to tell you that you're not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not weak. You are not alone. This podcast is where we will keep having the conversations most women were never taught to have. We will have them with truth, with tenderness, with compassion, with courage. Thank you for sitting in this moment with me. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. So until next time, listen to your body gently. And remember, you are not alone in this.